Welcome to episode 70 of the Permaculture PIMPcast, the only PIMPcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, and practical living. How you doing, son?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. This is weird. This is like take 3. We never redo anything, y'all. It's always the first time, all the way through, all the warts, all the flaws, all that stuff. But this is very different because for the first time ever, we're actually being visually recorded, which is weird.
On the PIMPcast.
Bam! That's what I'm talking about. So it's going to be a little weird. It feels disjointed because we got new music. We got all kinds of different everything.
Yeah, the music is different because we can't use, copywritten music on YouTube.
Well, and I guess we have permission to use this music.
Right.
This is basically from Joel Thomas and, actually Van Tesla. And we're working all this stuff out, y'all. So it's going to be, you're not really tuning in for the music. You're tuning in for the PIMPcast.
But also the people listening to it right now are probably wondering, like, what on earth are you guys talking about? Because they're listening to it through the podcast service because the YouTube video hasn't come out yet. So for the people listening to it, as soon as this comes out, stay tuned because there's going to be a YouTube video that follows it shortly.
Yeah. So that brings us into our sponsors, which is Hickory Ridge Soap from twooldcrows.com.
Turn that simp into a pimp. I almost forgot, though.
Bam!
Before that, the Permaculture Pimpcast is going to have a separate YouTube channel as well. It's not going to be on the Permapastures Farm YouTube channel. It's going to be on the Permaculture Pimpcast channel.
Yeah, we'll take care of all the housekeeping after we're done the typical routine. So from twooldcrows.com, that's where you get that soap 20% off through the month of February, which is, teetering around to be the end of it. And that is PIMPcast 20. That's what you want to put in there to get that discount. Also, EMP Shield, you get $50 off, especially check out that new promo. It's not a promo, excuse me. The new edition that they got there, it's called the
Mini.
Well, it's the Mini, yeah. But it's from EMP Shield. It goes on just about everything out there. And $50 off with promo code PERMA. And let's not also forget Harvest Right freeze dryers. If you need one, it's going to be down below in the description box. Or if you're watching on YouTube, same thing. The little arrow down below, that's where you got to go to get it. Now, don't forget to check us out on the Fountain app where you can tip a pimp. Right there. You see that? Yeah, you can go to the Fountain app. You can check out all the stuff you normally watch or listen to, rather, in terms of your podcasts and stuff like that. Yeah, you can check it out there. You can do what I do. You could triple up the speed, especially if you're just trying to get the content, not necessarily for entertainment purposes. But also, like I said, you can tip a pimp over there. And you could do it through Sisto or Sats. I don't even know why I even try to pronounce that.
Fractions of a Bitcoin. That's what it is. Fractions of a Bitcoin.
That's what you can do. Yeah, so you can tip a pimp over there. But hey, y'all, tip of the day. Now, we told you before, like I said, and for those that are new on board, PIMP stands for, that's why it's an acronym. Permaculture is my passion. We talk about in this podcast that it's permaculture, preparedness, and practical living, and all of that overlays with one another. It's not just permaculture, it's not just preparedness, it's not just practical living. But the tip I'm going to give today is definitely get your compost. Start becoming an expert on making compost. And the biggest reason I'm telling you right now, look at all the trains that are derailing, and this is apparently a more common occurrence than I ever knew. Look at that. Look at the trucking issues. Look at the price of fuel. At the end of the day, let's not also consider or forget about the fact that a lot of this nitrogen-based fertilizer, where does it come from? Ukraine.
Well, that area, yeah.
Right. Well, actually, for us, it's more Canada than Ukraine. But the point being is that these modalities of shipping are only going to get worse as time goes by.
Yeah, you mentioned the derailments happen more often than we thought. What classifies as a derailment?
Yeah.
And how many of them are like intentional derailments? Like we're taking this train off because it needs to be serviced or something like that.
Well, there's a bunch of that stuff, but also when it comes to a lot of the shipping issues that are going on these days. I mean, right now I'm seeing stuff, they're not even talking about it anymore, but man, just go to the grocery store and common items just ain't on the shelf right now.
Yeah.
Or they're putting half in the bag and then charging you twice as much. So anybody's going to tell me 8% inflation. Yeah, go buy those chips I get.
Or selling like expired products.
Yeah. Oh, or repackaging. That was one of the big things that a lot of these places, especially in the meat departments, they were getting busted for, is that they would sit here and repackage this stuff, put a new expiration date on it, and then it's off to the races again. Nobody ever cares.
As if you can't tell with meat.
Well, a lot of times you can't if it's not that far past that date. But there's a lot of sneaky stuff that's going to be going on. But the reason I'm going back to compost, we've done numerous videos on that. I mean, you can find it at Permapastures Farm on YouTube. And if you're here, I mean, there's only so far we can take you when you're, we're talking about this, or you're visually watching us in this medium. But we've done how many playlists on compost? I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't even know. Multiple ones and different ways of making compost as well. Like the Chicken Tractor on Steroids has its own has like 3 of its own playlists.
Yeah.
The 18-day compost, I think that has 2 or 3,
yeah.
2 different playlists.
2.
Yeah. So there's options for sure.
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying is that this is why I'm saying compost is because the more and more I'm thinking about these things, I'm thinking the way things overlay with one another and how we have this just-in-time shipping, which is a disaster in and of itself. But guess what? You can pull yourself completely out of all of that by knowing how to produce your own fertility, which is exactly what we're going to be covering later on in the program, how you can take these relationships among your animals, among yourselves, among your other farmers out there, and being able to make something that is of value. And it's really one of the hardest concepts in permaculture to convey, but we're going to cover that a little bit more as we go on.
It's also the last chapter of permaculture, so people might not get to it.
Yeah.
Building society and stuff like that.
Yeah, it takes some doing, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
All right, well, farm news, I've been up to my eyeballs. Man, I know what's going on. Trying to make bone sauce, y'all. That is a very, very, very laborious process. And on a good day, as far as my interaction with the fire and having to look after it, on a really good day, altogether, I don't know. It's hard to say for sure what the time may be, but it takes a fair amount of time. But today, good night, man. With the humidity, what it was, the wood was a little bit wet in some areas. Man, I spent 2/3 of today just trying to babysit a fire.
Yeah, you've been burning all day.
Yeah, and all for one batch.
Yeah.
And people, they wonder why this stuff costs money because, well, I'm telling you what, it is, if you get it too hot, you will absolutely destroy hundreds of dollars worth of product.
Yeah.
If you go too short, then you're going to be cooking it all over again. And now it's twice as difficult because your fire management is a whole lot more. I mean, this is why this stuff is so difficult to make. I mean, But yeah, that was what I spent a fair amount of time doing today. But hey, the weather's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's a little muggy. It's way more humid than it usually is around here. But it's still wonderful outside.
Yeah, which is weird because, at our altitude, generally there's low humidity. But here lately, I mean, it is fantastic t-shirt weather. You can't possibly complain about anything. And my goodness, I mean, we're going to take every advantage of it.
Yep.
So what were you out doing today?
Oh, I mailed off, some things. Well, I picked up some things that'll come up later in podcast episodes. I mailed off Seth Holehouse's order of operations and design for his property. And then came back, got some rocks loaded up, or went and got some rocks loaded up for the, what's that section over there by the bull?
It's a section.
Okay, we're going to put rock down there. I don't fully know the whole plan with the rock. I was just going to get it. Well, so what is the plan for the rock?
Well, one of the big problems has been historically is look, y'all, I know some people they think you're taking me to task by bringing this up because I talk about chemtrails, because I talk about, some of these things that are off the beaten path, and a lot of people are resistant to certain things. But look, I'm here to tell you, everybody here can vouch for it, that every time they start spraying that garbage up in the sky that some people just choose not to see, we have weird weather. And so it is nearly impossible to predict whether it's going to rain, what's going to happen. They'll tell you it's going to rain and then it doesn't, and then it does. And every major thing happens, it is preceded by a bunch of tic-tac-toe stuff in the sky. So what that means in terms of the rocks is when they're up doing that stuff, it's probably going to rain. Well, if it's raining, it's going to be real hard to get out in that field. So we may need those rocks to get
so
over
we don't
there.
get stuck getting Coco out.
Right, getting him out and get him pulled over. And of course, he's going to go over to Ben and Denise's at Renewed Homestead. So they'll link up. He'll link up with some cows over there. He's going to have a good time. And now we are going to be strictly until further notice, we're going to be strictly a sheep operation, pig operation, and chickens, maybe some other poultry and stuff up in here. But by and large, we have plans that we're not yet going to talk about. I mean, and a lot of them don't necessarily involve him. Right. So for what we have going on and what we're planning in the future, we need as little management. Now, keep in mind, as long as those freezers are full, we're good to go. But we also know that any given moment, like we did last time when we needed compost in a bad way, we know that we could fire up that chicken tractor on steroids, get all the compost we need, get all the birds we need. I mean, we've done it. We've hatched out our own eggs before. And brought them up on the chicken tractor on steroids. So we know we can mobilize meat at any given time. Getting pigs right now, at the beginning of this pandemic, was a little bit difficult, but now not so bad. So, so we got more than and we're having to give away meat. I mean, we are literally giving away pork, especially right now. We've given away a lot of chickens because we just got so much. So that's not a bad place to be. All right, y'all, before we get into the homesteading pastor, just want to let y'all know that here coming up pretty soon, and I'll give you the dates on that. Jason from Sow the Land has actually roped me into doing a pig butchery down at his place. And we're going to be doing that. And then prior to that, I don't have the dates right here in front of me. But remember, go check out the Holler Homestead. Check out the farm where you live, folks. And they're going to be putting on one coming up really soon. It's one of those things. Everybody and the great-grandmother is asking, how do I process my own animals today? Right. So I'll give you dates on that in the future. It's not going to be too far off. We're looking at like the end of April for the class that Jason and I think William will probably be there as well. So with that, let's go on to the homesteading pastor himself.
Hello, everyone. Pastor Lon here. I got a verse of scripture I want to share with you today. It's in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8. And it reads like this: Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. I am so glad to know that our Jesus always remains the same. Time can't change him. The culture didn't change him. And guess what? Our opinion can't change him. And whatever he done back in the day, he'll do the same for you and I today. And listen to some of the stuff that he done. He cast out demons. He raised Lazarus from the dead. He walked on water. He calmed the raging sea. He caused the dumb to speak. Amen. He opened deaf ears. He caused the lame to walk. He opened blinded eyes. He healed all manner of sickness and disease. And guess what else he done? He died on an old rugged cross that you and I could be made free from the bondage of sin. He got up on the third day, ascended back up into glory, where he sits at the right hand of his Father, interceding for you and I today, ready to come back and receive his bride to church when God, his Father, says so. So whatever you need today, he's still the same. Just ask him.
Pastor DeLon was fired up down on that one, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah, so y'all go check him out. Go subscribe. Homesteading Pastor on YouTube. My pastor.
The Homesteading Pastor.
No, it's just Homesteading
Pastor. Oh, it is
Pastor.
Homesteading Pastor?
Yeah, y'all, he's up here. He's tired and he's hungry.
I thought it was the Homesteading Pastor.
It's Homesteading Pastor. Just straight up Homesteading Pastor.
All right.
Yeah, it took me a while to get out of the, which nobody even knows what the definition of the is anyway. So, all right, y'all. So if you're new here, we got the bad news, good news section. For every one bad news, you're going to get two good news, all right? So really not a bad place to be these days. Okay, this one isn't necessarily an article. I was listening to, when I was out there burning, seems like all day, the last podcast I listened to out there, and I had a chance to go through quite a few, was Man in America podcast, and he was interviewing Dr. Peter McCullough. And I think it kind of, to a certain extent, goes to what we were talking about forever and a day. Dr. McCullough is saying that they are seeing, now remember, we're on YouTube, so look, I guess if we get busted off
we're
here,
good. Yeah, we're fine. It's the PIMPcast.
Yeah, well, okay, so this is something totally different. Oh, look, typically in the YouTube, in the podcast space, we are, we're less cautious. We say whatever we want, and we're still going to say whatever we want. And if they bust us off of YouTube, check us out on Brighteon. Check us out on Rumble. Yeah, that's where we'll be. So if they cut the feed on this one, you know what time it is. Go check us out at the other places, and you can always hear the audio version. So anyway, Peter McCullough is saying that with all the people that have succumbed to this jab, and it wasn't COVID, for all those people that have gone down by the wayside and have died, it's like there's this crazy thing, and we've talked about it to some extent, that is going on where these people seem to not care that they've been damaged, that they've been, some of them lost family members over this thing. And it's like there is something that they can't even get their heads around. Like for some reason, they can't get anybody to care.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to that quote you always quote, like it's easier to convince someone, or it's impossible to convince someone that they've been lied to.
Well, no amount of evidence can shatter a faith consciously based on a lie.
Yeah.
And it was a first-class charlatan that came up with that. No amount of evidence can shatter a faith consciously based on a lie. And then when you have everybody out there from the media sources to you name it, all singing to this same thing, I just don't understand, because if it were somebody that I seriously loved or cared about and they succumbed to this, I would be screaming it from the mountaintops. But Dr. McCullough's saying that it's like there's this programming, almost like this apathy, this thing that nobody can really make sense of, where it's like, okay, Uncle so-and-so bought it, or my mom bought it, or somebody else did, and you just can't get them to care.
Yeah.
You would think.
You really can't.
And Peter McCullough's like, I don't even know what to do. So he's sitting here scratching his head about all that. So that's bad news. But look, here's the good news. And it also comes from Dr. McCullough. I mean, that's a first. The bad and the good news all up from the same person. And nattokinase detoxifies COVID spike proteins from the body. Now, Dr. McCullough, Peter McCullough, like I know him. Hey, Pete. Pete, yeah.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah, Peter. Hey, Dr. McCullough, or Peter. I really hate, as a little side note, I really hate calling anybody doctor or any kind of title.
Yeah.
Any kind of those titles, because it's an appeal to authority. And just because that person has PhD by their name or doctor by their name, or it makes other people think that this person has a greater sense of knowledge or common sense, when some of the dumbest people I've ever met in my life have more degrees than a thermometer.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, Dr. McCullough, MD, he dropped another bombshell. Basically, this nattokinase is a natural enzyme found in fermented soybeans, and it's a powerful remedy against the corona Wuhan virus, and I guess spike proteins also.
So soy sauce? When you start, is that how you get it? Soy sauce?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
You can start eating some of that.
All I know, man, supposedly it works on the sweet and sour sniffles and all the other crazy stuff out there. So, I'm glad that we had talked before and hoped that people would find serious and adequate remedies to what's going on out there. And it looks like that's starting to happen. So I'm hoping this stuff keeps up. Also, on another note, we're talking about these, the thing that happened up there in that train derailment.
Yeah.
And of course, there's all kinds of dioxins and everything going else. Apparently, black tea, theoflavins, I guess that's what you call it. Theoflavins, I don't know. Somebody's probably going to make a complaint about that anyway. Well, supposedly it helps eliminate the effects of dioxins. Also, it seems like cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, things like that. A lot of the stuff in your what's that family of begins with a B, brassica family.
I kept thinking chlorophyll, because chlorophyll is what is also helping like detoxify people's blood and stuff like that with a lot of these dioxins and stuff like that. I just heard that on Mike Adams' podcast. He was saying like chlorophyll. I know chlorophyll, but there's an algae specific. I think it's like a derivative of chlorophyll.
I can't remember the name of it, but I know exactly what you're talking about. But hey, look, apparently it looks like a lot of these things help to maybe, I guess it's not going to chelate this stuff out of you, but maybe it'll help the people that are suffering. At the end of the day, I don't know. All I know is that is good news. All right, y'all, when we get back to it, we're going to get straight into the topic.
They cutting it off for the food too. Analytics they used to recruit. Sun Tzu. They don't want an individual, just a carbon copy. True spitting that manicotti, yeah, I'm talking saucy. All they want to build is a prison world full of pet time.
All right, coming back to it, y'all. Same show, different topic. If that even made any sense at all. It's still the PIMPcast, different topic, y'all. Here's the consequence when you work all day and then it's 9 o'clock at night and you're doing something like this, because we have long days even when we're not recording anything. All right, so topic of the day, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, and it has mostly to do with the fact that relationships, okay? Now, bear with me here, because there's a bunch of different, permaculture is really about relationships.
Yeah, and the interaction between them. Yeah, like two or more items or objects or topics and the relationships between them.
And what's so hard for most people to understand within this whole permaculture realm are the relationships. I don't know why it is, but that is the way it is, at least from my experience, is that I remember one time there was a lady that said, and you know who she is, she says, well, we'll just put the permaculture over there. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't really understand permaculture if that's how you think.
Let's start with zones.
Yeah.
Because it starts at your house.
And this is all on the same property. We'll put the permaculture over there. It does. If you say that, you really don't quite understand what it is and the value of understanding these relationships. And they go more than just animal to animal. So, for example, if you ever look at the designer's manual, the permaculture designer's manual, and I recommend everybody get one. I've only ever known 2 people as of late that have actually read the whole thing. It's more of a reference manual, okay?
Right.
Now, there's this diagram in the book where there's a chicken. And then there's like these little arrows shooting all the way around this chicken and all the things that let's say it needs, or all the things that it can give, okay?
Right.
Now, most people because we live in a reductionistic world, most people are never going to say, what is the relationship between that chicken and my garden? It just doesn't happen in America. But in many other countries throughout this planet, that is a big deal.
Yeah.
That chicken will have already had, in fact, find me a single video of the countryside in, let's say, Cambodia or Vietnam. You will always see pigs. You will always see chickens.
You don't have to go to the countryside. You can stay in the city and find chickens.
Water buffalo. I mean, right there going down the street. But hey, the point is that in these other places that are not westernized, they intrinsically understand these relationships that happen between, let's say, a water buffalo, or between the chicken or the garden, or whatever the case may be. It is one of the hardest things that we've been able to even try to tackle in this permaculture realm in terms of teaching. And folks, we're going to cover just a little bit of it today, but the best way to go about it to really understand it is that when we try to do these videos on our YouTube channel. Now, son, why don't you, just in terms of, let's say, we'll start with the humble chicken, because all this stuff mixed together. What relationship should a chicken have? And look, I know this is going to sound rudimentary for a certain number of people out there, but believe it, this is one of the hardest points to convey in permaculture.
Well, if you look at chickens and you look at its needs and what it produces, so it's assets and liabilities. Some of the assets is that it produces meat, it produces eggs, they scratch, they till, they produce fertility in the form of their own, manure. They wipe out pests. Some of their liabilities is that they need feed, they need water. They need shelter. They need some sort of like protection as well. Now, if you look at some of the other things that you would put on a garden, try to find something that complements a chicken, or that provides some of the assets or takes care of some of the liabilities. So like a garden, for example, is a perfect example of what works well with the chicken. The garden provides food. The chicken provides fertility. The chicken fertilizes the garden feeds the chicken, and then you got a complete system right there.
And depending on
it's a very simple complete system, but that is a complete system.
Yes. And then also think, let's say it's in terms of an orchard system where you want to be really careful about how your chickens interact within that system. We allow their interaction like in lanes and rows, but they don't actually have access to the areas where the actual trees are. So we put them in poultry netting, okay? So
the farmer is the peer mediator.
That's it. That's it. I'm the referee. That's it.
Yep.
That's really, and you're taking part in the system, but you're managing it. So you believe it or not, are part of this system also, because you can't dismiss your own You are creating the interactions that happen within the system, whether for good or for bad. It's all coming down on you. So you got to figure out your own role in this thing and how much of it you want to be a part. So like you just said, the chicken in the garden, Let's add chicken, garden, sheep. What does that look like?
Well, the sheep could be grazing your pastures. They could be getting, like for mom, for example, she dedicates pretty much a whole bed of kale to just the sheep. But it could be whatever varieties you wanted to. The sheep graze through the pasture. The chickens follow behind the sheep. Or you could have another flock following behind the sheep just to interact with the sheep, and another flock just with the garden just to interact with the garden. And I mean, there's two kind of separate systems that aren't too entirely separate, because the garden and chicken system still benefits the chicken and sheep system. Not as much, but it still does.
Yeah, but you could still, like, let's say it's more of a perennial garden type system like we have in our orchards.
There's that.
Where there's medicine actually being grown in there, not only for you and the chickens and the sheep and the cow and the pigs. There's medicine also in there, so they have limited interaction with some of these things. The point being is that we tend to think, and folks, if I don't communicate anything else, what has to be communicated, what is profound, is that we tend to always want to put these things. Okay, how many times just driving up and down the road do you see a bunch of cows out in the field?
Yep.
And that's all you see.
Yep.
You don't see any chickens going behind them. When those chickens, where not only could you get another crop or another modality for making money, let's say, out of that field, outside of just the cows that aren't really, it's going to take forever and a day. But what if you had cows out there? What if you had chickens? What if you have multi-species grazing going on in the same doggone area, and maybe the wood line all around the outside? You got pigs over there too.
Yeah.
And so instead of you just getting the cows out of the deal, good night. I can't even begin. And now let's say you put tree systems in there. Let's say it could be a typical silvopasture system, or it's a system where it's something like us, where we're combining our orchards as part of the silvopasture,
Right.
which, that isn't often done. I mean, it's more of a Mark Shepard type thing. We just do it a different way, where you have all these different interactions. So let's think about this. And folks, it might sound like we're beating a dead horse, because this, as you know, is the hardest thing to get people to understand. So do this exercise. No matter the animal, ask yourself, okay, is there a relationship? Let's say you have rabbits, and let's say that's where you started. Is there a relationship, or what relationship could I foster between the rabbits and, let's say, the chickens you're about to get?
Right.
Okay, so now let's say you figure that out. And so just off the top of your head, what would that look like?
You could do what Joel and Daniel Salatin do, and have the chickens in the rabbits in suspended cages, feed them. They poop on the ground, and the chickens are on the ground, and the chickens go through the rabbit poop, incorporating it into, I think, a carbon source for their example,
Which will ultimately be
compost. And if you're thinking back to a previous example, if you're thinking your sheep and cows don't benefit the garden at all, then you're not composting enough.
there you go. Yeah.
That the manure and the carcass afterwards.
Right. So there's this, and the word is overused today, but there is this symbiosis between all of this stuff. I get that's just a fancy way of saying working together. Every single thing, not one thing that you grow in terms of a plant, and not one animal should be raised in isolation. But that flies in and of itself right in the face of everything we've been taught in the Western culture, or anything that we ever see.
Look at feedlots.
There you go.
That's the exact opposite of what nature has been showing us.
Yeah, and we're paying the piper for it.
Yeah.
So when you have, let's say, an orchard system, like we do, okay, you got this interaction where the trees are providing shade, let's say, to the chickens, and if they don't have it, then we will intervene on that behalf.
It's
We
also
can put out
protection.
shade. Yes, exactly. There's protection and shade. Well, let's say some of that rotten food hits the ground, or fruit. Well, it's going to go to the chicken or pigs, because they're the
Right.
ones most likely to eat it. Every once in a while you might slip an apple to one of your bovines or your sheep or whatever. But for the most part, you should be looking for zero waste
Yeah.
in terms of everything. So even the relationship of that chicken, I'm using chicken, but it could very well apply to anything. That relationship from the time that chicken, let's say you process that thing and it goes in the pot. Well, Okay, this is the easiest way to make you understand how that could be used. So this chicken was alive. It ended up in a kill cone, ultimately in my freezer. Okay, so what came off of that animal before we got it into the freezer?
The feathers, the organs,
The beak,
the beak.
the head, really.
Well, yeah. Feet, and that's about it.
Yeah, so all those different things, and there's parts of the organs like the gizzards and the hearts and stuff you may
Even the
want to keep
feet.
anyway.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
people, or mom keeps the feet.
Yeah, for collagen and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, so she'll make collagen. So think about this. On this animal that was alive, had it been in a factory confinement house and then went off to go get processed at Tyson, most of that stuff is going to be in a landfill or it's going to be waste. Okay? Think about it. The feathers, everything he cited all the way down will be, what's it going to be? Compost. Every single time. Now, it goes into my freezer. Now, okay, it's in the freezer and now I'm ready to eat it. Okay, let's say I left this chicken whole. Well, the chicken has things that most people, most humans aren't going to eat, and those are bones.
Yep.
So what can I do with those bones?
Well, they can get composted or fed to they can be turned into bone broth.
Bone sauce.
Bone sauce. I mean, there's a lot of options.
Yeah, by the way,
meal.
bone sauce, y'all, you don't eat it.
Yeah.
You
Bone
don't eat
sauce is a all natural deer repellent.
Right. It'll be turned into bone sauce, and then ultimately the bones that are left will be turned into bone meal,
Yeah.
which we will use over again. There is not one single bit of waste in a system like this, especially when you examine enough systems, you realize, okay, is there anything I'm going to have to throw away in this?
Yeah.
If you don't find a way to compost it or find it in some other use in your place, then you haven't really thought it all the way through. So can the same thing be done with, let's say, a sheep that you process, son?
Yeah, absolutely. And that usually, when we process sheep and pigs, that's usually the best compost we make for the year, is whenever we have some sort of animal carcass within the compost decomposing. It provides almost like a gel effect almost. Like it produces more of a stickiness to the compost, I think.
Well, I guess it ought to. It's the red blood up in there.
Yeah.
But it's the same exact thing. The same thing I described with the chickens, whereas there's not one part of this animal that goes to waste. It is the same thing for no matter the animal. And that's the way you ought to be looking at it. Now, you should be asking the same exact thing for, let's say, your garden. You got out here. You should have zero waste. It always drives me crazy when I would see, like in these neighborhoods when I'll drive through sometimes, and they got these bags of garden waste.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
bags of leaves.
Good. Yeah, don't get me started on that, because I'll take it. You're doing all the work for me.
Yep.
I'm just going to go there and I'm going to take all those leaves and I'm going to take them back. I'll put them in the barn until I need them. And they're doing 99% of the work for me.
Pimp in the neighborhood.
Yep. Elevating that pimp hand on those leaves. Pop. Anyway, that's exactly what I'm getting at, is that if you have any waste in your garden that isn't going into a compost pile, then you're not thinking it all the way through, or isn't being used as a means, like putting it into the back end of that chicken,
Right. Yeah. Or the front end.
Or, to the front end, and then, right,
Yeah.
escaping out the back end. Everything should have a cycle. So going back to these relationships, there is not one single thing that should not have a relationship with the ground or with another animal or with your compost piles. That's the biggest thing everybody misses.
Well, also we're missing one aspect, and that's the relationship with time as well, because you have to factor that in with your systems. So, like, let's say I have a grazing system in place where there's sheep grazing through, and then there's chickens following behind them and stuff like that. Well, that system gets bigger the longer I do that correctly, because now it allows for more grazing capacity. I can have more sheep on there or upgrade to a larger ruminant or something like that. So there's an aspect of time in these relationships you need to consider as well, which a lot of I would say almost no farmer does, due to the grazing methods they use, and very few permaculture designers do.
That's a very good point there. But these relationships honestly go on. And in fact, I'm going to hit this from a preparedness standpoint. Now, we're talking about relationships as it pertains to the animals on your farm. But what about the relationships that you have with yourself and, let's say, maybe your family, or yourself or your neighbors, or yourself and some group that you want to be a part of? Have you thought about those relationships? Because that's all part of it too. The community relationship, which in all honesty, it's one of the things I'm least good at.
It's one of the things hardest to find, I would say. It's not that we're not good at it. It's just the hardest thing to find. It is much easier to build your farm than it is to find someone else to, like, I don't know. I don't know how to word that. But this is definitely the hardest relationship to build.
Well, it was like Jeff Lawton, I think, said, it's not the work that's difficult. It's the people that are difficult. And sometimes that's the relationship between us sometimes. Or let's say you may forge some of these relationships out there where you're giving it 110% for let's say your neighbor, but you're only getting about 45% from them. So then you got to be asking yourself, okay, is this fruitful? Yeah. Is this worth my effort when I'm giving 110% as it pertains to them, but you only see maybe 20% back?
And if they're
could be family too. It could be family that's doing that.
And if they're making decisions off fear, run.
Yes.
Run.
Yes.
That is not someone you want to team up with.
That's a fact.
It's going to be a flighty thing because they're going to be all of a sudden, okay, let's get everything all at once. And then they lose interest. You're stuck doing everything. And then some other event happens and they're like, all right, we need to get this now. And there's just another system, and you're adding systems on systems that aren't actually systems. They're just random objects that don't interact with each other.
We've been down that road before, well, more than once, where, you're teamed up with some person and it's like, let's do this. And then they fleet out or they fade out or they flake out on down the line. But we've seen it over and over and over again. So this is the part that I really want to get to in terms, because we're kind of getting to the shady end of this segment. But the thing I really want to point out is that all these other relationships I just talked about, you'll find out that the relationship between your chickens and your garden is going to be pretty easy to.
That's going to be the easiest doggone relationship you have on your farm.
Or in your life.
Yeah.
In your life, because it's the human interactions that you have with your neighbors. And remember, permaculture, preparedness, and practical living, that's what we're all about. And part of that comes down to the relationships that you have with people around you. And it could very well be your family. Just because you share DNA with them doesn't mean they're good for you. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
All right. When we get back, y'all, we're going to get straight into the Q&A.
Up about Elon, buying Twitter like he gon' save us. Left and right, squabbling while he got chips for your heads, calling him courageous. No bueno, I answer to no one, start calling me NATO. Digital cheese on the way though. Get you a bowl of Alfredo. It's a woke summer. I need another booster before I hit the beach.
All right. More of that Van Tesla.
Yeah. I don't know why I like that song so much.
It's a woke summer.
Yeah, woke summer. It's like calling out everything ridiculous that happened this past summer.
Man, well, there's no shortage on that. Pastor Lon sent me a little thing a little while ago, and good night, man. This wokeness stuff, man, it is literally it's doggone cancer, man. It's a disease.
Yep.
All right, y'all. So we're going to get into the Q&A section. I guess I'll kick it off. It's here from Sean. I don't know how this is going to translate on here, y'all, but
we'll get it figured out.
Yeah, we're going to work it out. This is our inaugural YouTube thing. We got everything in which we normally do the show is upside down, so bear with us. We're going to tighten it up. All right, Sean, if y'all end up trying out urotherapy, you got to change your tagline to Permaculture PIMPcast from where we put P in the pimp. I thought he was going to say something else totally else. That could have been weird.
Could have been weird.
Could have been weird.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to have to be missing a limb to try the urotherapy. Like, a lot of stuff is going to have to go wrong. Like, we tried everything else and it ain't working. Then I'll try it.
Yeah. We had a guest on, Christopher Key, I don't know, a week or two ago. And he had talked about it. And honestly, I don't doubt that there may be something to it, but boy, I'm going to need a whole. What
am I taking vitamins
bad
for?
Way, bro. Yeah, if you tell me the first thing I'm drinking up in the morning, no.
Yeah, this is from Andy Bowley. This is on the Fountain app also, guys. Great show. Can you link Nick Burton's website?
Burton.
Nick Burton, his website, Nicholas Burtner.
Burtner?
I think, yeah, Nick, he wrote Nick Burton. He goes by Nicholas.
Yeah.
And it's Nicholas Burtner. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to call him
the,
Nicholas for sure.
He's at the School of Permaculture. Yeah, we can link his website. He also has a YouTube channel called the School of Permaculture.
Yeah, go check it out. So we got one from Casey. I heard William say he was going to provide a source for the knives. I recommend Anvil Bladesmiths. I've been using their knives for a couple of years now. Good quality and good prices. Do you know anything about them?
I haven't. There are so many doggone. Ever since that show Forged in Fire came out, there have been so many. Everybody started making blades. The downside is that there's just a lot of downsides to it. The tempering, for one, is a big issue with a lot of these knives, especially by these new companies and stuff, because they'll get a new super steel. A new super steel will come out on the market. They'll get it, and then they don't temper it correctly. Like it's almost better getting a cheaper steel sometimes with a correct temper than it is to buy. Well, it's definitely better than buying a super steel with an improper temper.
Okay, learn something every day.
Sorry.
No, I never heard of super steel, but go ahead.
I got one from Cheetah68. Greetings, gents. If you have the data plan to allow... What? That reminded me of that weird Bowflex commercial when I was a little kid.
Yeah, grr.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm on top of the world, like a tiger. Grr.
Anyway, Cheetah68. Greetings, gents. If you have the data plan to allow for it, you should run Waze Map app when traveling. The data is fed into the map by other travelers and by your passengers. It's helped me because it announces problems ahead, stopped vehicles, road debris, potholes, animals or on or near roads, closures, and slowdowns ahead. Also, cops. It can real-time route you around problems.
Hey, that would have been handy driving through West Virginia. I guess that's probably what provoked that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even
comment.
think about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
that
so
would have been a good idea.
that would have been pretty handy to know that thing was going to be. Man, I still can't even imagine what must have went down with that.
The first thing I was thinking was just randomly routing routes to Knoxville. See how many times there's a semi flipped over on the way over there.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Hey, thanks for the info.
Yeah.
We got one from Buddy. He lives in Northeast Georgia. He's got a lot of rain over the past year. He says, my half-acre lot on the hill has a large amount of water. It's eroded some of the parts of the hill. Do we have a permaculture solution for any of that? Buddy, it's really hard to, or Zeb. Well, it says Buddy, but Zeb. Okay, I guess you go by both. It's really difficult to give you any specific advice without actually having seen it. That's the hard part about the thing that drives so many people crazy in permaculture is what? It depends.
It depends, yeah.
It depends. And you always think that it's a cop-out when you first get into it, and every other time they're saying it depends. Well, it is absolutely true.
Like if your hill's too steep and we tell you to put a swale there, then you're going to have a landslide. If your land isn't flat enough, or if your land is too flat and we tell you to put a terrace there, then you just have like a random mound in your, and maybe a French drain would be the best application.
But you don't know.
But we don't know.
Yeah, you can't possibly say, because that's one of the, we're just spread too doggone thin. I can't give you any more advice other than that, is that it depends. Now, if your grade is too deep, too steep, now, remember, when that energy, which is what water is, when it hits, I always say it, you can capture it for a little while, deflect it, and even amplify it. And in some cases, you can do all three.
Yeah.
So you got to ask yourself, it sounds like maybe you want to think about deflection, or maybe you want to deflect it over and capture it in another place. Those are things you're going to have to consider. But frankly, we just can't tell you with any kind of specificity without actually having seen it.
Here's a vague design. You could put a swale at the top of the hill. Well, without seeing it, but this is just an example of what could be possible depending if your land fits the criteria. You could put a swale at the top of the hill that leads into a pond, and now you have a ton of potential energy with that water high up in the landscape. And then from there, you could have like a drainage system that goes into another swale, or into just a pipe that goes under the ground into an adequate drainage supply. So those are some possibilities for you. I got another one from Strider47. Well, Dad, this is one specifically for you to read.
Man, I can't even see that, dude. What?
It's how you say tip a pimp. You got to sing it.
Tip a pimp.
Yep, that's it.
I'm like, dude, I can't. How are you even reading that?
How, Dad?
Dude, I need Hubble Space Telescope to even read that writing that small. I don't know how anybody can read that.
Well,
so what did he have to say?
That was the whole thing. Hashtag tip a pimp.
Okay. Hashtag tip.
And you can tip a pimp. And you can tip a pimp on a fountain nap.
Yeah, you could do it a lot of different ways. This one is really cool. And I wish, hopefully we get to the point, we'll probably get there in the future. But got one from Zach. And good night, man. This one blew my mind. Okay, so I'm going to do the best I can. He says, I hope this message finds you well. I'm going to basically get down to it. Now, he's in the 20 degrees where he is. And look at what he's got here. He's got basically a dryer vent going outside. And it's a genius idea. I mean, can we even put this up there so you can see it?
Yeah, if you send me the image, I can put it up on the video.
Well, can you hold it up there close enough to where they could?
Yeah.
Son, I'm over here. Okay, so what he's got there is basically his dryer vent is going down. This is the coolest thing ever, man. It's poking through the wall. It's going down. And the moist, warm air from the dryer, he's got making mushrooms out there for him in this pile.
Did he say what kind? Huh? Mushroom or oyster?
It's hard to say. No, he didn't say it, man. This is fantastic,
That's
man.
Cool.
That is an absolutely cool, awesome idea.
What if you could have the vent?
How genius is that?
What if you had the vent going into like an attached greenhouse to the house? Could that work?
I guess you could. I mean, some of that moisture may not be a wonderful thing, especially on a really cold day. It might. Yeah. I mean, honestly, he kicked out an idea there. Y'all, that is what we were talking about with relationships and permaculture.
That's cool.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So you're going to dry your clothes anyway, unless you're hanging them outside. Why not have that dryer heat perform some pretty awesome stuff?
Yeah.
Dude, if I can give you a little gold star, bro, you knocked it out of the park on that one. I got to give it to you.
I got one from Stark Raving Ranch. There is a lot of literature that shows carbon, often referred to as granulated active carbon, GAC, is effective at removing dioxane 1,4 from water. Surely there are some papers that detail efficacy in other aqueous mixtures and solutions. The key is probably the type of material used, coconut hulls having one of the best pore size for effective organic absorption, and particle granular size.
I mean, these are exactly the solutions we're going to have to provide. And you know what? I'll bet any amount of money, like everybody, not everybody, but the people actually looking at this saying, look, dioxin is really the perfect poison.
I was thinking, like, would a composting system eventually get rid of it? And if it does lock it up, does it actually make dioxin inert? Because apparently it's not just 1,4-dioxin that's the issue. It's like the 2,5,8 one as well.
That's exactly what I was getting at myself. I was thinking, okay, from a biological standpoint, I would bet money, just like they eventually, like we talked about in the last one, where, Paul Stamets and a number of others have realized, hey, these mushrooms can do astonishing things, even in a nuclear environment. I would almost bet that there is some, and I wouldn't even want to test it, but I don't know, but I would bet money that through composting, a lot of this stuff could be tied up and made inert.
And how much of it, okay, so around the Ohio River and all the creeks and the watershed that goes into the Ohio River and everything that extends past the Ohio River, I wonder how much of that we could clean up with like reed beds and stuff.
Well, I mean, Dr. Ingham had talked about a similar thing, like talking about, down in South Texas, man, it used to be the place where, you go to get some awesome oysters and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that is completely wiped out. Thanks to a lot of the industry down there. I mean, it's dreadful when you stop to think what we are doing to this planet, but how incredibly simple it is to clean up a lot of this stuff.
I have a question, and it's a moral dilemma, I think, regarding this whole accident in Ohio. Is it wrong? Okay, so if composting would like speed up the lockup of all these toxins, is it wrong to have sacrificial herds in order to increase the composting effect on like vast acres of land or like forests or anything like that?
I don't know. That is a moral dilemma.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of this stuff. It's difficult for me to just chalk up as coincidence.
Like those cows or whatever ruminants you're using are going to die.
I don't know that you'd have to do all that, man. I wonder if there are other ways. I mean, Some people are just saying bury the whole doggone place. I mean, nobody knows for sure. And in fact, I don't think we're ever going to find out legitimate stuff until, I mean, it's like nobody cares. I mean, I don't even know what planet I'm on anymore. Nobody even cares. And frankly, I'm not really all that anxious to sacrifice a bunch of cows for a bunch of people that really couldn't care less.
We have a lot of land in the North America, so maybe just move on to the next spot.
Yeah, you might have to. All right, we got this one here is from Human. Don't really know your name there.
Thankfully.
But they were saying, I thought it was interesting. What would happen that if instead of a train of, and this is something of a thought experiment they put out there, and why is it every time you hear about a derailment, it's always some calamitous item? Like, why couldn't, and they use the example here, why couldn't it be vitamin C that just fell off this train?
Well, hey, that would still be a calamity. If you don't believe me, your dad's been finding, he's been testing my limits on vitamin C lately.
Yeah, well, that wasn't entirely on me.
I got a comment from actually one of the ratings and reviews from the PIMPcast app, or from the Apple Podcast app, listening to the PIMPcast. This one says, it's titled Perma Normal, and it's from J012. So I absolutely love the show, love all the farming aspects that Billy and William bring to the table, but wow, the latest episode about Mount Graham and conspiracies was amazing. Your guest Joel Thomas has a wealth of knowledge and made this an interesting change of pace for the show. Definitely need more stuff like this and bonus episodes added into your episodes.
Well, I sure appreciate that. We're going to try to do more. Some of this stuff, we may have to do it like Seth Holhouse, where some of it is on YouTube, and then some of the more stuff that we know that we're going to get jabbed for. And this episode might very well be one of them. Some
Wouldn't
of these
that be
things,
messed up?
Some of these things, yeah, we got banned on our first one. Dude, we're doing things right now.
Yeah.
So if you can't ever find us here, or when I say here, I mean that's going to be everywhere. Check us out on Brighteon. And there's going to be episodes that are going to be exclusive Brighteon and
well, right now Brighteon, there's going to be a lot of Brighteon exclusive content coming in the future.
Yeah, we might even go live there if we get the opportunity to as well. Because when you get down to brass tacks with a lot of this stuff, y'all, we've been saying I am not going to rewire my brain, because in the podcast we've been pretty much saying it the way we see it.
Yep.
And the way we think about it. And there's been zero. At first, it took a little bit of doing to get myself around the fact of, hey, I can say pretty much anything I want, at least for now. And then now we're back on YouTube with this. This is part of I didn't want to do it. I'll be honest with you. I did not want this to be a visual medium. I wanted to keep this in a radio sort of realm. But I understand now, I think, the value of also having that we can reach more people doing the video thing as well. There was a great deal of reluctance in doing it, but I now understand why that could be of great value. But at the same time, there's going to probably be some episodes that you're going to find exclusively over on Rumble and Brighteon.
We're going to upload it to YouTube, and they're going to be like, absolutely not.
No, they're going to be like, we'll probably get blasted right out of the gates on the first one.
Which is crazy that we're not using any profanity, nothing. We're not saying anything vulgar, and this is something we have to be concerned. Well, we're not concerned about it, but this is something we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, we get this one a lot, y'all. This one's from Drew, and thank you so much for asking. But it says, hey, brother, my name is Bobby. Well, I thought it was Drew. Okay, I guess it's Bobby. First of all, well, let me just get down to brass tacks. He's basically saying we're looking for acreage in Tennessee, and we'd be grateful if there's anything you'd be willing to share. I know you're busy, but I had to ask. Folks, we get a lot of that lately.
Yeah.
And I truly wish we could, but we are literally up to our eyeballs. Every time we record this PIMPcast, it's at 9:00 at night, and it's after having spent all day doing farming.
Yeah.
I mean, this is in addition to producing, like, let's say YouTube content or content for Patreon. This requires, I'm not just going to sit in here and not, as you can see, I got notes. I don't have a whole lot of them. But we are basically shooting, not from the hip. We prepare the show to a certain extent. But I also wanted that feel of thinking that it's not scripted, which clearly it isn't.
Which, I mean, we're talking about what we know for the most part. And minus like the world news, good news, bad news, stuff like that. I mean, we're just talking about our personal observations and opinions on things.
Right.
And
also,
mostly facts.
Yeah, there you go. What else you got, son?
I got another one from the podcast app. Always delivering useful information. This is from Boxcar Driver. Billy and William always deliver the goods on this podcast. It is because they don't just talk about it, they live it. I love the passion they bring to the subject, whether it's just if it's a subject, whether it's about what you should put in zone 1 or chemtrails. Thank you.
Man, I really appreciate that because, we're going to look, there's going to be, I've gotten, some people have also sent emails and they were polite saying, hey, I think you guys are going a little bit off the rails. Okay. Living in esoteric world. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I heard some parody of Madonna's Living a Material Girl song, whatever that was. But that's exactly what we live, is in an esoteric world. And it's becoming more so every single day. And I got to be honest with you. It's like John B. Wells at Caravan to Midnight used to always say, look, if this is not a battle between good and evil, then none of this makes any sense. And the only thing that makes sense a lot of times is, honestly, it is hard for me to imagine that people just of their regular everyday minds are coming up with this stuff. Mm-hmm. I think there is a great deal of evil, and I think almost like a marionette, it's all happening. So how do I fuse that? How do I tell you what's going on in the real world the way I see it in farming and leave this part out? I just, in my brain, I don't know how to do it. If I know for a fact, every single time I get up there and I see him playing tic-tac-toe in the sky, it has happened so many times. And it's increasing. It's only getting worse.
How can we express the need for compost without telling you everything that's going on in the world?
Right.
Like there's no way for you to understand the urgency and the need for you to make your own compost without understanding everything that's like you can't. I mean, yeah, you have to know about what's happening.
But I don't think you can separate that component of the esoteric in all of this. You know, if you want an honest analysis, you're not always going to agree with me, and I'm not always going to agree with you. We don't agree with each other all the time. But it's honestly the way I see it, where I'm looking at, I'm collating all what I think is this data. I'm a farmer. I'm a permaculture designer. I'm a butcher. I'm a businessman. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm doing all these things just like so many of you out there. And I'm trying to put all these things together in a way that makes sense. And the only way that the status quo makes sense is tying in these other parts. That, remember, we talked about, okay, here's why I think we're able to do it. Is because we are permaculture designers. Because I don't see things. I've rid myself of that reductionistic worldview. Like, let's say you got high blood pressure. Well, here's your pill. No, I want to look at holistic. And like, okay, you got high blood pressure. Let's find out the cause.
You watch the news.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point being is that you're looking for a holistic solution, not a reductionistic solution. Well, it's going back to the same thing. Is that when we overlay all the different components in all of this, we've got to be able to, I'm not going to say we, I'm going to say I have got to have some answer that makes sense. And I think it's far beyond, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, you know. I think it's far deeper than what those things are. So anyway, that's why we bring this esoteric into it. And then when I have a weird experience, like I'm out in, you know, Arizona and I'm there and this sort of thing happens. Okay, well, it only makes for, I don't know. I like to think it was maybe an interesting story. I mean, it was my story. So, I mean, it was interesting to me anyway.
Dad brought up a book and got kicked out.
Yeah. Bring up a book. Yeah. You talk about that book. Oh,
and it wasn't the Bible.
Yeah. How about that? How about that? Yeah. So but look, we're going to do more of that too, because there are people, I don't want to tip our hand right yet because I haven't even reached out to some of these people, but in the future, I want to get some of these other folks on. Yes, we are primarily a permaculture preparedness and practical living, but part of that preparedness means we're preparing our souls as well.
Yeah.
If you didn't believe me, that's why we bring on Homesteading Pastor. That's why we tell you to go check him out. Because if in all of this, you lose your soul along the way, then what was any of it worth? I don't care what those potatoes look like. All right, son, you got anything else?
That's it.
All right, y'all, that's going to do it for us. Until next time, stay alert.
Stay alive.